I'm late to the obsession craze. I blame my damn newborn. Some of the best cinema I get as of late is from one of his smiles. Corny and sentimental opening though it may be, I just can't hide that I'm a sensitive, creative type with a certified career path as a therapist for men's issues. If I can't talk openly about feelings, why would any of my male clients do so? Besides, I tend to work with a lot of sensitive men like Bear from Obsession, who, whether I care to admit it or not, are a lot like me. There's been a lot of excellent think pieces all about obsession. Its themes around consent, enmeshment, codependency, and of particular interest to this channel, the lie that is a nice guy. Frankly, I know a lot about the ins and outs of the nice guy spiel because that was me not about a decade ago. Similarly, there's been an abundance of discussion around this nice guy trope far before obsession hit the scene. Channels like The Take, Savage Books, and many other film and TV analysis content creators discuss how nice guys actually are. By unnice, they're usually describing how apparent nice men, particularly who tend toward introspection, being shy, and having a deep pining for the object of their affection, many times have an ulterior motive when doing all manner of their sweet gestures. What often is the motive? You guessed it, sex. But I kind of want to expand and nuance this. Because while Bear clearly desired sex with Nikki, he also desired her genuine affection and attention. Let me be crystal clear here. The lack of consent and will from Nikki when she and Bear do the deed is tantamount to a word that rhymes with grape. So while I nuance Bear's internal world to make better sense of it, his actions still end up making him guilty of assault. The beauty of obsession, I think, is the way it reveals the falseness of nice guys while also hinting at what really is their problem. Namely, an inability to state how they feel, often from fear around rejection, which then ends up culminating in a soul-crushing level of loneliness. Bear is so much like me, but he's also a lot like Zach Braff in Garden State, Tom in 500 Days of Summer, Charlie in Perks of Being a Wallflower, Clay Jensen in 13 Reasons Why. To take it a step further, these nice guys are written by, shocker, nice guys. The introspective, shy, pining for a love he can't quite have kind of guy is a guy that in some ways is as old as time. And it probably goes even further back than the man Shakespeare himself. I'm not going to claim exactly why this dynamic goes down with a, quote, nice guy and cute girl with unmatched attraction. What I will comment on here isn't meant to fit the bill for all nice guys ever fictionalized in story or those pining in real life. But I do think it applies in a way that's worth noting. In the internal psyche that is the average, quote, nice guy, there's a sort of dual consciousness similar to what's experienced by minority groups attempting to assimilate to a majority group. Here's another disclaimer. I'm not saying the nice guy experience is equivalent to being a person of color or of a sexual minority, only using the label as a framing device to explain this further. Essentially, the way a nice guy sees the world, especially the world of dating and relationships, is coded more or less with an in-group and an out-group. The in-group is composed of men they observe, often, quote, alpha men, or, in the case of obsession, Bear's friend, Ian, seemingly able to date and connect with those who they desire with relative ease, while guys like Bear perceive themselves as being in this supposed out-group. Using my own experience as an example, especially when I was younger, I saw this kind of order or structure of things playing out in a way that was deeply upsetting to that younger self. There was more than one girl who caught my fancy, and more than one time that fancy was not reciprocated. Bear to me seems like a fellow who likely experienced something similar early on. While he seems to be in good standing with Ian, who, for all intents and purposes, may actually be a nicer form of an alpha male, there's an immediate tension between the two friends in the way that communication flows so easily for Ian, and with such difficulty for Bear. As an aside, and on a different note, I also think this speaks to the surge of responses from young men with the phrase, "pass me the controller," in reference to essentially how Bear so frequently stumbles his way through his forced relationship with Nikki as a form of wasted opportunity, which is why they want the controller to be passed to them. And I believe this is primarily due to the attractiveness of Nikki, which I'll address more later, but I thought worth noting. Due to the movie having a 2-hour runtime, we really are focused on Bear and Nikki, and then to a lesser degree, Ian and Sarah, and they're the main characters throughout the movie. Furthermore, since they're coded in their early 20s and having known each other since high school, it's fitting to have the whole scope of the story honed in on the four of them. Yet the opening scene of the movie, where Bear's inability to speak candidly and honestly to Nikki about how he feels even when rehearsing, stemming most likely from fears around perceived rejection, is rooted, I believe, in a lack of parental or mentoring input on the basics of communication. Ian does his best, if playfully teasing Bear as he goes, to guide Bear into speaking directly and openly to Nikki. But for Bear, he hears Ian's input as solely reinforcing what he already thinks is true, that women in his life are likely to go for an Ian over a guy like himself any day of the week. So as to not tread on water that's been treaded extensively. This belief that Bear holds that women prefer men not like him is found all over certain kinds of algorithms. Also explored in earnest with the show Adolescence, a sort of spiritual sibling to Obsession from last year. Man, I might do a piece on that show too. Regardless, there's a scene I resonated with all too well, which put me back into that younger, disappointed self when his fears about her genuine feelings are revealed. Her meaning Nikki. And innocently to start or not, he then decides to circumvent her lack of feeling for him, do the one wish thing, and then spearhead the tense horror goodness that is the rest of this surprisingly good movie. If all these things are true, and nice guys everywhere can do creepy stuff like snap a piece of wood to bypass a woman's will to sleep and date her, why would I compare myself to him? Give him a sort of nod of understanding, some ways dancing around the fact that in actuality, Bear may be a predator. Because when I was caught in this fake nice guy spiral, which thankfully predated getting caught into algorithms that could have twisted my psyche and led me down some terrible conclusions, what I actually needed then was acknowledgement. Not from my version of a Nikki, although I would have deeply preferred that at the time. No, I needed other people to see what was happening and give me validation and also correction. For someone to know that my heart was big and I felt things deeply, often leading to struggles in communication with my romantic crushes, and that one day the right woman would want to meet this level of affection. While also noting bluntly and directly to me that if I continued to pine after those who had already stated a lack of desire for me, it would only lead to greater bitterness and resentment toward an entire gender, which would in effect only make subsequent efforts around dating that much harder. My incel path was blocked by several good men who diverted me away. I'm very glad I was born when I was, and not around a decade later. I'm really sad for the real life bears who might not have a wood piece to snap, allowing them to unethically coerce themselves into a relationship, but are instead taking misguided ideologies around gender dynamics, listening to rhetoric from unredeemed and unhealthy alphas, and more deeply burrowing themselves into forms of loneliness and lack of companionship. They're observing the genuine beauty and charm of Nikki's character, entirely deluding themselves into interpreting the movie differently from the intended message and wanting, quote, the controller to be passed. And controller meaning this intense enmeshment level of obsession from a hot girl, ignoring all the ethical dilemma that comes from it and the hollowness that would come from forced love. All in all, these young men are thinking that due to the intense loneliness of our modern time and the legitimate difficulties of modern online dating, they'll take their need for intimacy in whatever form they can get, sketchy and immoral though it may be. The problem is, simply put, that Bear didn't need Nikki or Ian. Bear needed mentoring, therapy, his dad's input, In my own life and in my own bear phase, I had over the course of a decade's time, no less than 8 different paternal and mentor figures to help guide me into becoming the man I am now. While I'm married happily with a cute newborn to boot, prior to that, I had the guidance of men who assisted me in navigating the crippling loneliness that Bear is experiencing. And Spider-Man as well. Shameless plug for that episode. Bear's choices emanate from this place of incredible loneliness, which culminates in the film's tragic plotline. Bear's problems are true for most young men, and frankly, any men for that matter. We need to be wanted, to be seen, to be understood. And if the broader culture doesn't seem to care about this issue, then men will resort to whatever means necessary to attain it, causing deep societal ramifications in the meantime. I'm enjoying the discourse the movie is promoting. Horror really is having a moment and kind of has had it for several years now. And as all good horror movies do, Obsession is shining a light on a real psychological phenomenon happening with men that deserves more awareness, more caution, and more concern. And now it's y'all's turn. In what ways, when watching Obsession, did you resonate with Bear? And also, in what ways do you think that you're addressing it? And in which ways do you think there's still more for you to do? For a lot of our work and channel on Influ-Men-Sirs, the point is to be honest about some of the perils of being a man in our modern moment and how difficult that can be. So whichever way you feel comfortable in sharing the honesty in connecting with Bear's character would be excellent to see. All right. Y'all have a good one. Thanks, y'all, for listening to the crew blabber, laugh, cry, go on epic ADHD rabbit trails, and all things between. Like and subscribe primarily on YouTube and Spotify, and hope to see you on the next one. Peace.